Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for November 9th, 2017. On today's show, we're going to take a look at a bunch of news, including news on the Metal Gear Solid movie, the first early buzz from Future Man, Seth Rogen, and Evan Goldberg's time travel show for Hulu. Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio has been canceled. Shawn Levy, one of the Stranger Things producers and directors, is directing a new film, which we're going to talk about. All the Money in the World has replaced Kevin Spacey after the film has been shot. Apple is greenlighting another TV drama, and no more new Marvel Netflix shows are going to be happening on Netflix. We'll have news on that. And in the mailbag, we'll be talking about how many streaming services is too many, which is very topical since we're talking about, Marvel, Netflix, and Apple's new TV series. Joining me on today's podcast are Slash Film senior writer Ben Pearson.
Hey, what's up?
Slash Film writer Chris Evangelista.
Hello.
How's it going, guys?
All right.
Pretty good.
It's going good. Let's jump right into the news. The Metal Gear Solid movie has gotten a screenwriter. Chris, you wrote this up for the site. What do we know?
Right, so Derek Connolly, who wrote Jurassic World, and he wrote the sequel, Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, and he's also going to be writing Star Wars Episode 10, or co-writing it, I guess, has just been hired to write...
Actually, I'm not even sure that's the case anymore, because, he was working with his pal there, Colin Trevorrow, who is no longer on that project. So I'm not sure if he's still on that.
They're not going to use his draft, you don't think, or anything he wrote?
Well, we don't know. I mean,
right.
I would assume that they're throwing out everything if they were that unhappy with it. But I guess you're right. We don't know. They could be using his draft, yeah. But I would assume they're redoing it heavily, and it would be a story by credit, if anything. But who knows? We don't know. Okay, go on. Sorry.
Right, and he also wrote Kong Skull Island for Jordan Voight. How do you say his name? Jordan Voight Roberts? Is that correct?
I think so.
Right. So Jordan Voight Roberts is directing the Metal Gear Solid movie, so I guess he brought on his writer from Kong Skull Island to write the latest draft for this. There's been drafts before this, but Derek Connolly is the latest writer hired to take a crack at it.
Now, I never played Metal Gear Solid. Were either of you fans of that video game series?
I recently got a PlayStation 4, and one of the games that I got with it as a gift was Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain. I had never played any other games in this franchise, but I've been tinkering around with this one a little bit, and it sort of reminds me of Splinter Cell, which is another video game where it's like you're sort of creeping around in the dark, and there's a lot of spy action going on. There's some combat stuff in there too, but it's a lot of like... I guess like reconnaissance and sort of, it's better to have a lighter touch instead of just running in guns blazing. It's not that kind of a game. But yeah, I'm interested to see what a movie looks like because I have very little experience with this franchise as a whole. Well,
we haven't seen a lot of movies that portray spy, like, ratcheting up the tension of like not being caught, being stealthy kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you think that would make a good movie?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a lot of potential there. The characters and this game starts out with this bizarre supernatural thing. And like I said, I'm not familiar with any of the other games in this franchise. So I'm not sure how much of that is a late addition because this is the fifth game. But yeah, there's going to be some weird stuff in there if they do sort of a direct adaptation of the most recent game, because there are like characters that fly around and ones that like appear as like fire gods almost out of nowhere. And I'm sure I have much more to learn about their backstories as this game goes on. I'm only like 3% through the game, but it's going to be a weird movie. That's for sure.
Yeah. Now, what's our opinion on Derek Connolly? Because I know a lot of people do not like Colin Trevorrow, and he's kind of been tied to him for most of his filmography thus far. I mean, he did do Kong Skull Island, but I think, the screenplay for Kong Skull Island was not the better part of that movie. Chris, do you have any thoughts on Derek?
I mean, he wrote Monster Trucks, which I really like, and so I don't have a problem with it. I mean, he clearly does not write scripts that I would consider to be high art, but he's obviously doing something right because he keeps getting hired to all these high concept projects. So someone must like him.
Yes. Also in the news, a lot of reviews have come out for Future Man, the Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg time travel show, which is going to launch on Hulu. I'm actually very interested in this because, Seth Rogen has wanted to do a remake of The Last Starfighter for the longest time, couldn't get the rights, and I think this TV show seems to be the result of that. Ben, you wrote up an article combining all the reviews. What is the early buzz for this show?
Yeah, I think generally speaking, this quote from the Washington Post sums it up best. They say, "It's a dumb, profane, and predictable show that works because it never once aims for greatness. Everyone here just wants the viewer to enjoy the ride." So that seems to be a pretty good summation of a lot of the early reviews. And as you mentioned, this show it stars Josh Hutcherson from the Hunger Games franchise. And he is a janitor who plays a video game and is like the best in the world at this video game. And when he beats the game, he sort of unlocks, or I guess releases, two time travelers from the future who reveal that this game is actually like a recruitment tool where they are looking to find, the savior who can help them save the world in the future, basically. So there's a lot of riffing on the Terminator and Last Starfighter and Back to the Future, and I guess the show, it definitely wears its influences on its sleeve. The Hollywood Reporter says there's a process that's repeated multiple times when watching this show. First, you notice a character or a beat that feels incredibly familiar, and you think, man, this show is totally ripping off blank. Then, just as you're about to be frustrated, Future Man will make explicit reference to that thing being mimicked or echoed, not as a wink or a nudge, but as a, yes, we know what we're doing, and we know that you know acknowledgement. Is it clever and knowing, or is it obvious and pandering? The correct answer is probably yes, all of these things. So I like that little breakdown. So I feel like it's one of those things that it's going to be very personal whether you react well to this show or not. I guess it depends a lot on your particular tolerance for nostalgia and sort of overt geeky references and things like that. But I guess there's a lot of ridiculous sort of graphic, filthy, raunchy humor and stuff, which is to be expected with any Seth Rogen, Evan Goldberg property. But yeah, I don't know. I'm interested.
Yeah, I've been very interested in this, but the reviews are not confidence inducing. I mean, I grew up as part of that Clerks generation. I love references and homages and stuff like that, but I also want something to be good.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'll give it a chance, but it sounds like I know you and your choosiness with new TV shows. This doesn't sound like something you'd give a chance.
I'll wait and see what you think about it after 3 or 4 episodes, and then give it a shot.
Okay. Also in the news, Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio is not happening. Someone joked on Twitter that should be just like a reoccurring news story every week that, Guillermo del Toro's blank is not happening because he has so much in development and none of it almost ever happens. Chris, what do we know about this?
Right. So like you said, Guillermo del Toro has a wealth of projects that he announces and then they never get made. There's At the Mountains of Madness. There's the Haunted Mansion movie. The list is pretty much endless. And as always,
it's like dozens of projects, like literally dozens of projects.
It's a lot, and it's always frustrating because they always sound like really cool projects, and they just don't get made. And adding to the list is he was going to make a stop-motion adaptation of Pinocchio, and now he's saying that, too, is just not going to happen. And it was in development for a long time. He was working on it since at least 2008, and now he just gave an update saying it's officially canceled, and that's about it.
Do we know why?
He doesn't really give a reason. He just basically shrugged it off as just these things happen, basically, that he just makes these, he gets committed to these projects and they just can't get them off the ground.
I was excited for this because it, involved the Jim Henson Company. I kind of wish there was someone, I said this on Twitter, I kind of wish there was someone like Megan Ellison who loved Guillermo del Toro so much that, that they would just finance, a film a year from this guy. But it doesn't seem to be happening that way. Shawn Levy, one of the directors and producers of Stranger Things, has signed on to direct this new movie, which is being pitched as Stand By Me on the Moon. Ben, what do we know about this?
Yes, the film is called Crater, and it is described as a coming-of-age story in the vein of Stand By Me, set on a moon colony. After the death of his father, a boy growing up on a lunar mining colony takes a trip to explore a mysterious crater along with his 4 best friends prior to being permanently relocated to another planet. So, yeah, definitely a Stand By Me vibe. Definitely some Stranger Things in there. And with Shawn Levy, whose work not only includes Stranger Things, but he actually got his start directing TV shows like The Secret World of Alex Mack and Animorphs and The Famous Jet Jackson. People of a certain age will probably recognize all of those shows. I sort of grew up watching all of those shows. So he definitely has a lot of experience directing films with child protagonists. I think he works pretty well with with kid actors, and this sort of coming of age story. He also produced The Spectacular Now, which is a really great coming-of-age indie movie that came out a few years ago. So I think he's a pretty good fit for this. I know that Shawn Levy is not like the coolest director on film Twitter or anything like that, but I feel like he's pretty solid. He makes some cheesy stuff, the Night at the Museum movies. I actually liked Real Steel that he directed in 2011. I'm not really sure what you guys think about that movie or if you think this film has any potential, but I'm like cautiously optimistic about this.
I mean, I think Shawn Levy, the word, and I used it when we were talking about Stranger Things, is vanilla. He is just, he's fine. They're just like plain and simple, and Real Steel is probably my favorite from him, and I think that's probably because I can feel the Spielberg influence on that film. He produced that film. But this premise is actually very interesting. Yeah, and I think Stranger Things cannot be, you can't give Shawn Levy credit for Stranger Things. I think his producing partner, I forget his name, I think it's Dan something, was the guy that found the Duffer Brothers and found the project, and he's largely responsible for, it happening and the success of it. But yes, moving on, All the Money in the World is a movie that we've already seen a trailer of. It's already finished shooting, but they are replacing Kevin Spacey in the movie during post-production. Chris, what do we know?
Right, so this is pretty much a very unprecedented move. This has pretty much never happened before. In light of the allegations against Kevin Spacey, Ridley Scott is going to go back and reshoot all of Kevin Spacey's scenes in the upcoming All the Money in the World and replace him with actor Christopher Plummer. And, obviously films in the past have replaced actors before, like Eric Stoltz got replaced on Back to the Future, that sort of stuff. But that usually happens during production. This film, it's finished, it's in the can, it's like 3 weeks away from being released. And now, because of all this, bad buzz around it, because of Kevin Spacey, they're going to quickly try and patch it up. And not only are they going to reshoot, they're still trying to stick to the December 22nd release date, which is, it's crazy. That's, a month away, basically. They're going to try and have this stick to that. And I don't know, I guess they're going to be able to do it because Ridley Scott seems confident it's going to happen, but it's very, it's a shocking story.
Yeah, I can't even think of a film that has, shot scenes that late into, to the actual release. Actually, Avengers 1, Joss Whedon famously filmed the end credit scene with the shawarma the night of the world premiere, or the day of the world premiere of that film, which I think was a couple weeks before the release. So that's the closest thing I can think of. I can't think of anybody being recast this late into production. Ben, do you have any thoughts on this?
I mean, this is crazy. I'm shocked at this whole thing, but I think two things come to mind. One, I read that Spacey only shot 8 days on the movie, so theoretically, Plummer would only have to shoot for a little more than a week or something. That still is this timeline is still crazy regardless, but maybe it's not quite as manic as we sort of imagine it could be if he has that small a role in there. The other thing is, this movie, I feel like nobody was talking about this film before this happened, and now all eyes are on this movie. So I feel like Christopher Plummer could actually get some serious attention if he's good in this film, because people are just going to be curious about it, and wondering, what happened. So maybe Christopher Plummer will be sort of the beneficiary of all of this craziness.
It is very crazy, but yeah, like you said, I think this is a small role. If he only shot 8 days on the film, they probably edited the film down, and they probably, cut some of those scenes, and they know what they need, and they only need his part of those scenes. So likely he only needs to come in for a few days to just film those parts. But yeah, I think everybody's going to want to see this when it comes out. So let's get into streaming. We're talking about streaming now. Apple we've talked about, they are doing Amazing Stories, the Steven Spielberg revamp of Amazing Stories. Now they have hired Jennifer Aniston and Reese Witherspoon for a morning TV drama, and they ordered a 2-season order. Ben, what is going on here?
Yes, so this has been one of the 2 shows, as you mentioned, Amazing Stories is the other one, that Apple has been going after for their first real push into original TV programming. We're still not sure, which is very weird. We still don't know exactly how these shows are going to be presented to potential viewers. We don't know if they're going to be released through Apple's TV app, or if they're going to be on iTunes, or if they're going to be supported by advertising, traditional commercials, or if it's a subscription model or something that they're going to be launching. All of that is still up in the air, but we know for sure that this show is going to happen. They are giving the show doesn't even have a name yet, but it's a drama starring Jennifer Aniston and Reese Witherspoon about the sort of cutthroat world of morning TV shows like the Today Show and Good Morning America, that kind of stuff. So I guess it's based on a book by a CNN correspondent that is about the real rivalry between those 2 aforementioned shows. So this is going to be, I guess, Aniston and Witherspoon are starring as maybe the anchors of these 2 opposing shows, and they're going to be sort of fighting it out. But yeah, that's the gist of it.
I mean, those are 2 big names. I've always liked TV shows that kind of have a performance in the backstage, Studio 60, The Newsroom, those kind of, I guess those are both by Aaron Sorkin, but those kind of shows where, there is 2 different planes going on at the same time. That seems interesting for a show. I just wonder, what is this Apple TV thing going to be? Is it going to be another subscription service that is going to be another app on Apple TV that you click on, and do you get it free for having an Apple TV, or do you have to pay for a subscription? What do you imagine this could actually be, Ben?
Man, it's tough to guess right now because they're still so early in that process, and they really haven't this is their first official announcement of these shows. So they're still in the process of figuring out how to unveil all of this to the world. And I think those decisions are actually still being made. If I had to guess, I would say that maybe it's going to be, I don't know. We're going to talk about subscription services in just a minute. And I think maybe Apple will go away from that model. Maybe it'll release it for free for a little while, maybe the first few episodes, just to sort of get people hooked, and then ask for a payment via iTunes or something like that. That would be my guess, but I'm certainly not an expert in this area, so we'll have to see what they end up going with.
Yeah, it's so strange. I feel like Apple, we're so used to them innovating and doing interesting things. Now in recent years, they've been just kind of chasing what everybody else is doing. So I kind of cynical me thinks that they're just going to create another streaming service. But hopeful me thinks that maybe they have something up their sleeves that is more interesting than that. I do know that they have they've been doing original programming already on Apple TV on their Apple Music app. There's Carpool Karaoke, and there's like a Battle of the Apps, which is kind of like Shark Tank for iPhone apps, which to me sounds extremely interesting. I watched the first episode, wanted to watch it, then realized I had to subscribe to Apple Music, which I'm not a big music guy, so I didn't do, and I have not seen it. So, I mean, we'll talk about that later. In terms of like what would it get you to pay for another subscription service? But before we get there, let's talk about one last streaming thing. And there's this big article in the Wall Street Journal, basically about Disney's plans to buy Fox. Apparently, it was to compete with Netflix. That was their grand plan. And also, they have no plans to do new Netflix Marvel shows. Chris, what do we know?
Right. So the deal with Disney trying to buy 21st Century Fox included not all of, but a large chunk of the Fox TV output. And that was part of the plan. Basically, Disney is launching their own streaming service in 2019 to compete with Netflix. And part of the idea with the Fox deal was to get all those Fox shows and I guess put those onto that streaming service. Right now, that deal is pretty much dead or dormant, so I don't know what's going on with that. But in the story in the Wall Street Journal, it's revealed that all future Marvel, not Netflix, but all future Marvel shows will debut on the Disney streaming service, not Netflix. And it's not clear whether or not the current Marvel Netflix shows like Daredevil and Jessica Jones, all those, will be making the leap to this streaming service. But if I had to guess, I would say that's probably going to happen because Disney is already planning to pull all their movies off of Netflix and put those on the streaming service. So it just seems like it makes sense that they're going for broke and just taking everything.
But it is weird that those Marvel TV shows on Netflix are Netflix originals, which is usually a term that is indicative of Netflix owning that show in perpetuity for the rest of life as we know it. So I can't imagine that Netflix would give up those shows to have them go onto Disney's network. And I also can't imagine that Netflix would allow, because they were co-producers on these shows, allow Disney to just take over full production of them. But maybe, we don't know what the contracts are like. It's going to be interesting to see. I think one of the most interesting things in this article is that it states that it's going to cost Disney $300 million or over $300 million a year to take all their content off streaming services and put it on their own streaming service, because they usually get that much money in licensing fees from like companies like Netflix. So I guess the question is a Disney streaming service going to make them over $300 million a year? What do you guys think?
Yes, of course. Come on, Peter. You know it will.
I mean, you need like what? If it's $10 a month for a Disney streaming service, I'm doing the quick math in my head, carrying the one. That means there needs to be 30 million people subscribing to the service to break even, right?
Yes, I'm pretty sure they're going to be able to easily get that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean, they are Disney, so you're probably right, and they probably will have a Star Wars TV show, which will definitely make me pay the money. But we'll get to that now. In the mailbag today, I wanted to talk about this isn't actually a question submitted by readers, but I thought with all the streaming news coming out, I thought it would be interesting to talk about how many streaming services is too many streaming services. So I guess before we get to that question, let's start off with how many streaming services do you currently pay for? How about you, Chris?
It's got to be at least 5 or 6. I have Netflix, I have Amazon, I have Filmstruck, I have Shudder.
But do you pay for Amazon? Or I guess you pay for Amazon Prime, right?
Right, Amazon Prime you pay for, which, I mean, it's worth it because you get that free shipping, so that you get more than one thing with that. But it's a lot, and
see, I always look at Amazon Prime as kind of like I'm paying for the free shipping and I get free movies and TV shows.
Right.
I don't look at it as I'm paying for that.
That's true. Yeah.
But how about you, Ben?
Well, Chris, it should also be mentioned that you cover a lot of streaming stuff for the site, right? Like you write like a streaming column and everything. So that's like
Right.
part of it. How much of that do you think that you would subscribe to if you weren't doing that? Just if you were just a regular movie lover?
I don't know. I'd probably keep Amazon because again, the shipping, but like Netflix, a lot of times I can get like screeners from Netflix, so maybe I don't even need that service, stuff like that. So, so yeah, I'm sure I'd drop some of them if I didn't have the column.
Yeah, I am keeping it extremely simple. I subscribe to Netflix, and then I also am part of or I'm subscribing for the disc plan for Netflix as well. I think I get like 2 discs per month. I'm on that level, just because I love watching older stuff that often is not streaming on Netflix, and that's still for me the easiest way to do it, especially with like if there was a Blockbuster right across the street or something.
How much does that cost you?
I think it's like $18 a month or something like that.
Now you don't think that, or how many movies do you end up watching a month based on that? Not to derail us, which I am, but
yeah, I don't know, because we watch a lot of shows on Netflix, so I guess it's tough. I mean, typically we will watch, my wife and I will watch both of the rentals that we get in the month. Sometimes we don't get to one, if we're like really busy, like this month we're out of town for 2 weeks, so we're probably are not going to to make full use of that payment. But I still like the ability to just throw a disc in the queue and have it delivered to my house and not have to worry about it too much.
I guess my question is, why not just rent the movie for $5 on like iTunes or something?
Well, and that's another thing is I think I'm just sort of I'm too old school for that. I have never rented anything through iTunes. I think I bought The Interview, the Seth Rogen, Evan Goldberg, James Franco movie in, what was that, 2013 when that came out, through like Google Play or something, just as like an FU to to like all of the hackers and all of that stuff. I was like, all right, I'm going to support these guys. So that was I spent like whatever, $10 or something and bought that. And that's the only movie that I own digitally, that I purchased digitally, I should say. There are a lot of, as Peter pointed out in the past, the digital download and stuff that come along with Blu-rays and whatnot. But yeah, that's for me. I just don't watch stuff through, because I don't watch anything on my computer really. I just watch everything through streaming through my PlayStation or on my television. I don't have Apple TV. And
but there's a PlayStation movie store. You could be renting stuff on the PlayStation movie store.
Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like I don't need it. If I have Netflix and the disc plan, I'm sort of good with that.
Yeah. So what else do you have other than Netflix?
That's it, really. I mean, the only thing that I would really want, I think, right now is Amazon. But because I live in an apartment that has a locked gate out front, it's hard enough for like my post, the post office guy to get into my apartment complex, let alone an Amazon delivery person. So because the gate is locked, if I was living in a house and they could just drive up and deliver packages on my doorstep or something, I think I would subscribe to Amazon Prime in a heartbeat. But because of my living situation right now, it's just sort of like more of a pain in the ass to have to worry about unlocking the door manually and like getting down there and making sure that all that shit happens the way it's supposed to and all that. So I just have out of laziness and my my living scenario have not subscribed to Amazon Prime.
And you don't have HBO Go?
Oh yeah, I guess I do. I have HBO Go, but that sort of like comes with a subscription to HBO, so it's not it's not that much of a streaming service, I guess.
I feel like I might have topped both of you in streaming services. I have Netflix, of course, because why not? And I feel like it's the biggest value in entertainment right now is Netflix. I have HBO Go and Showtime now, but those come with my subscriptions to them through PlayStation Vue, which I use for my cable. I also have CBS. What is that? All Access or whatever it's called.
Yep.
Which I am probably going to plan on canceling because I'm not really loving Star Trek Discovery, and I can't imagine spending this much money just for one show. I have Hulu. I'm surprised you guys didn't say Hulu. There's some shows I watch that are on there that aren't on my cable television, like Nathan For You and some other stuff that I just need to have. And I think my last and final streaming service is technically I have Amazon, and technically I have YouTube Red, which is YouTube's streaming service, but I pay the $5 or $8 or whatever it is a month for that, solely not to watch their exclusive content, but just to avoid all ads completely on YouTube videos, not only on YouTube, but embedded everywhere on the internet, including on my phone. So that to me is worth paying that amount of money. So I guess the question is now, it's obvious that I'm willing to pay for anything. And you guys are a lot more picky. So I guess why do you guys... Why do you not pay for like a service like Hulu?
I mean, Hulu, I don't know. For some reason, I've always been adverse to Hulu. Also, Hulu and Amazon have a lot of the same movies. And Hulu has a lot of TV, but I don't really watch a lot of TV. So as far as the movies are concerned, pretty much everything that Hulu gets, Amazon gets as well. So I never really saw the need for that, personally.
Yeah, I have not gotten around to Hulu. I think it's just because there's so much other stuff to watch. There are definitely things on Hulu that I want to see, like The Handmaid's Tale. I've not seen any of that yet, and I'm interested. I just can't find... I don't find myself...
You should also seek out Sneaky Pete, which is another Hulu original that I like.
Oh, is that the Bryan Cranston one?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I've heard good things about that. So yeah, I mean, there's stuff definitely. It's not like I'm opposed to the content. It's just, I feel like there's, it's a little bit like what we talked about yesterday, the anxiety of peak TV. There's just like too much out there. I feel like I have enough on my plate already without, subscribing to Hulu and realizing like, oh crap, there's actually 7 shows that I want to watch on here now that I have to just add, to this ever growing backlog of things. So I'm just trying to sort of chip away and enjoy what I watch on the services that I have, and then I'll subscribe to Hulu at some point because I do want to see Handmaid's Tale. I do want to finish the Mindy Project, which I was watching when that was on Fox, and then I haven't followed it over to Hulu, and yeah, some stuff like that.
So I guess the question is, what does Disney or Apple need to do to make you a subscriber to their service? It sounds like we all agree that like 1 or 2 TV shows is probably not enough to get us to pay $10 a month, right? Like, it needs to be more than just like... I mean, I think a lot of people pay for HBO. I know you guys are saying that there's a lot more out of HBO than Game of Thrones. Yeah. But I think a lot of people pay, what is it, $10, $15 for HBO just for Game of Thrones. So they're watching, 4 hours of content a month for that $15. So what does Apple and Disney need to do to make you a subscriber, Ben?
For me, it would be they would have to release a show from a filmmaker that or a TV showrunner that I just love their work and refuse to miss anything that they make. And I feel like even that, like, maybe there would have to be another show on there at least that I would be interested in watching as well. Like if Quentin Tarantino was like, all right, I'm making a 15-part limited series that's only available on Hulu, I would probably subscribe to that, just for that, and because, like I said, there are some other things that I know on Hulu that I'm interested in watching already. But like for the Disney thing, if they were like, all right, we're doing a Star Wars show, honestly, I would probably just wait and see what you guys thought about it, because I know that everyone else is going to subscribe to it, especially on Slash Film, and you guys are all going to be watching it. But you wouldn't want to be
part of like that water cooler. I feel like a Star Wars show would be such a part of pop culture and part of the conversation.
I don't know. I would have to see who's involved with it, I guess. That would be a key thing for me, because that's a big part of how I choose what TV shows I watch, is like, who's in it, who's making it, do I trust these people as storytellers, have they delivered in the past? It's not necessarily just the IP that I'm concerned with, it's the people who are telling the story. So if it was a Star Wars show and Rian Johnson was directing a lot of the episodes of it, or I don't know. It would have to be a lot of elements would have to come together for me to do it just based on one show. But what about you, Chris?
I don't know. I feel like I'm going to have to subscribe for work, as we've talked about, but
let's say you aren't doing streaming columns. Is a Star Wars weekly television show enough to make you subscribe to a Disney streaming service?
It depends. If it's like live action, then yes. I'm not really into like the animated ones. So if they do like an animated one, then no. But if it's like a live action one and it has actors I care about and directors I care about, then yeah, I guess that might convince me.
And here's the other question: does the success of a Disney or Apple streaming service, I guess no. Let me ask this again: is the success of a Disney streaming service for you dependent on original content? Like, Disney has a library of TV shows and movies that is unmatched, I think, to all the other studios. Like, is that enough? Like, if they just put out their entire, if they put the Disney Vault and they open the Disney Vault online, is that something it would be enough for you to make you a subscriber?
No. For me, it would actually. If they put the whole vault on there, because there's a lot of stuff, that they put it back in the vault and it goes out of print. That might be enough. No,
I think if they could do that and they put everything, including the old Disneyland TV specials, just completely opened up their content library, I think that would be enough to get me to subscribe. Star Wars would be a definite yes. But I really don't know what Apple's going to do. Like, it's baffling to me because I don't think they could just make do on a few original TV shows, and they don't have a library of content. Maybe Apple will buy Fox. And I can't imagine what their game plan is.
There's one thing I want to mention real quick, not to drag this out, but in terms of Apple, and I've written a lot about their original TV plans on the site, and you can read a lot about this there. But recently, they were just saying that you don't expect to see, nudity or hear foul language or anything like that in this first batch, at least, of Apple shows, because they want the ability to play all of their shows on screens in the Apple Store. So they're not going to have nudity and all that stuff on the screens as kids are wandering in and out of malls everywhere in America. So, maybe eventually they'll look for their own version of Game of Thrones or Breaking Bad or The Crown, which were the three shows that they were sort of, an early report suggested that Apple was looking for a show of that caliber. But as we've seen, Amazing Stories is a sci-fi anthology show that's probably not going to have any of that content. And then this morning TV drama with Reese Witherspoon and Jennifer Aniston is probably going to be pretty safe in that regard too. So just one thing, for people to think about as Apple starts making all these announcements.
For sure. Okay. Lastly, let's get to the question at hand. The question that started this all is, how many services are too many? Like, what's the most that you could see you actually subscribing to? Like, I personally envision a future where I don't actually subscribe to a cable service. Like, right now I subscribe to PlayStation Vue as my cable. I envision a future where I subscribe to, Netflix, HBO Go, Disney, I subscribe to channels and not necessarily like a whole platter of networks and services. Mm-hmm. What about you guys? Like, how many services are too many?
What do you think, Chris?
I'll say 10. I'm going to draw the line at 10. No more than 10 for me.
I think for me it would probably be closer to 5, or maybe 6 or 7 if you count like HBO Go or Showtime among them. But yeah, I you got to draw the line somewhere for sure.
Well, I'm interested to hear what you guys out there think. If you have any opinions that we did not state on this podcast, please send them to peter@slashfilm.com. That's also where you can send your questions for the mailbag. That's peter@slashfilm.com. Chris, where can we find more of your work online?
I am on slashfilm.com, and you can find me on Twitter at cevangelista413.
Ben, where can we find you?
I'm also at slashfilm.com, and you can find me on Twitter at Ben Pears.
You can find me on Twitter at slashfilm. You can find all the stories we talked about today on slashfilm.com, and linked in the show notes, you can find this podcast, Slash Film Daily, published every weekday on iTunes, Google Play, Overcast, all the popular podcast apps. Please go to iTunes, give us a rating, give us a review. That helps us out quite a bit. Spread the word, tell your friends, and we'll see you tomorrow.